Hi everyone. Hope all of you are back. So let's continue with the risk assessment on 3-2. So before jumping directly into the standard 3-2, we will touch upon what is risk assessment, and what are the different standards which are available for OTA ISS environments. And then we will go through the workflow or the flow chart as per 62443 3-2. And also we'll try to cover the target security level and what are the different methodologies to establish the target security level. And before jumping into the Q&A session, we'll try to have a practical session on conducting a risk assessment with one of the example, right, architecture. Yeah. So the first and foremost question. So what is the definition of risk? Actually, risk is a function of your threat, vulnerability, and the consequence, right? So what is threat? Basically, it's the potential attacker. Example, maybe hacker, group targeting the power plants, such that. Shiv, can you go back? Go back to the previous slide. Yeah. Yes. And the vulnerability. So when we talk about vulnerability, it's a weakness in your system. Okay, any weakness in your system is the vulnerability. For example, maybe unpatched software in your any control systems. So, and the consequence is the potential impact if the attack happens successfully, or maybe the blackout caused by the disrupted control system. That is the consequence. And also there is one more definition you have to remember. It's a likelihood. So in the threat into vulnerability is nothing but likelihood. Sometimes we have seen when we conduct the risk assessment, when we use the risk matrix, either it can be likelihood into consequence, or likelihood into impact, or threat into vulnerability. There are many ways to show the risk matrix. So what is the definition of likelihood? Because this also plays a major role. It's the probability that the specific threat exploiting a particular vulnerability. Okay, so if where you're seeing is the risk is at the expectation of loss expressed as the probability that a particular threat will exploit a particular vulnerability with a particular consequence. So this is the definition given in the 62443 standard. So let us try to understand with some of the example. Okay, so the expectation of loss. Okay, first we'll try to understand the particular threat. The threat could be the malicious actor who has previously attacked targets some of the ICS, and they aim to disrupt any operations in your manufacturing process or power plant or oil and gas plants. And here the vulnerability. So how they will exploit is by using the vulnerability. Vulnerability is nothing but your outdated patches. Then the consequence, if that attacker, malicious actor, manages to exploit this particular outdated patch, then what is the consequence? The consequence is the expectation of loss. So what is the expectation of loss here? It could halt the manufacturing line, or maybe safety issues, or maybe a significant production downtime. There could be financial losses, or maybe reputational damage. So these are all the the consequences, the expectation of loss. So if you carefully read out the first three, the risk is a function of threat into vulnerability into consequence, and the expectation of loss expressed as the probability that a particular threat will exploit a particular vulnerability with a particular consequence. So all these three definitions correlate to each other. Okay, we try to understand with some of the examples. So in the last paragraph, we have given the scenario where you have a power plant where in the control system software has some vulnerability that has not been patched yet. So this one of the group known for targeting any energy infrastructure, that is a threat, has just released a new form of malicious software that can exploit this exact vulnerability. So in this case, the threat is nothing but the adversary group who is targeting the energy, energy infrastructures, and the vulnerability is that has not been patched yet, and they have released the malicious software. So like such kind of so here the risk is what? The adversary group who is very famous for attacking this energy infrastructure with the new malicious software. So the risk is very high in this case. Okay, yeah. Moving forward, can we move? Yeah. So what is the risk assessment? So this is very important, okay? Because we know about risk, but sometimes it is very good to understand the risk assessment. It's a process basically. You have to identify the threat, you have to identify the vulnerabilities, and what could be the consequence based on if this the threat actor exploits the vulnerability. So what is going to happen? And you have to quantify that loss exposures, right? So the consequence based on the probability of occurrence. And also you can recommend how to allocate the resources to countermeasure this to minimize the total exposure, right? Sometimes we often combines this with risk assessment with vulnerability assessment to identify any vulnerability and quantify the associated risk. So why it is important? First of all, why do we need to conduct the risk assessment is to, what is the current security posture of my plant or my system. So accordingly, I can allocate my resource so that, I can give the prioritize those resources into the highest risk, and then the critical or critical high, and then medium, and then low. So sometimes it is, if you go to any, be it IT or OT, always we start our process with the risk assessment, correct? So once we, the workshop is completed, the risk assessment workshop is completed, then we can allocate the resource. And also this could be the business case. And also we need some kind of budget to implement the security measures out of this, right? This is the risk assessment. Okay. Can we move further? Now, there is always various questions comes into picture. So when we talk about the IT, when we do the conducting risk assessment, if you go to any GRC person, right, who is working in IT, definitely they will have 100 of standards which is for conducting the risk assessment. But for OT, what are the different risk assessment standard that we can use or we can adopt? The first one is always the 3-2 security risk assessment. I think widely adopted nowadays. I have seen these are all based on my my Shiv's experience that we have taken only 4, but there are many other the risk assessment standards which is adopted by many industries. I mean, if you go to rail industry, maybe they might use the different one, and if you go to marine industry, they might use their own industry standard. But overall, if you take the 62443 3-2 also talks about this, and 27005 also guidance on managing information security risk, and NIST 830 is widely adopted. And based on this, each and every company organization has come up with their own the risk assessment sheet or risk assessment template. And also the widely adopted is ISO 31010, that is a risk management. The risk assessment techniques is well explained. But if you look at closely the the flow chart or workflow on each of these standards, it's same. Okay, wherever you go, it says that identify threats, identify the vulnerabilities, and you identify the the what are the consequences or impact, and then you determine the risk. And once you have done the risk, and then you countermeasure, what are the countermeasure, and the reporting of all the risk identified. So this is the same workflow you can find in all these 4 standards. But today we will let's dive deep into the 3-2 standard. Yeah, Shiv, can you move? Yeah. So just to highlight few things here, before jumping into the workflow, there are some prerequisite conducting the risk assessment. This is also as per 62443. You gather information system under consideration. This is the very first step. What is a system under consideration? It's a system where maybe it could be system architecture, or it could be a one component for you. I think many of you are working in the the OT domain, or if you are from IT, there will be always which system you are performing the risk assessment. For this, you have to create. You can collect the asset inventory details from the end user. You can also collect system architecture, network diagrams, and also the risk matrix is very important because it depends. The tolerable risk level is from it varies from organization to organization. So this risk matrix is very much important, to quantify the risk. some people use 5 into 5 matrix. Maybe some organization uses 3 into 3, maybe high, low, medium, only 3. So it depends. And then you have to take the process hazard analysis and hazard and operability analysis, HAZOP study, which is usually done for the safety systems. But still, that will holds good for our critical operations in each of the critical infrastructure, and gather threat information specific to the industry. For example, the threat related to the energy might not be the same for marine, or maybe it could not be the same for railway sector, or it could not be same for railway sector. So, I mean oil and gas sector. So you have to gather those information. How can you gather? There are various sources available nowadays. ICS advisory project. If you go, these things we will share definitely. When we share these contents with you, and also you can gather the vulnerability assessment report. You can do it through by. There are various means. Now you can visit the National Vulnerability Database, or maybe the CISA, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency, also carries out this, always releases the vulnerability list with the CV scoring, CVSS, that is ICS CERT, Computer Emergency Response Team. So if you type in Google, so you will always get those links straight away. You can, or maybe ICS advisory, one project where I really felt those are really updated as and when there is a new vulnerability has been found in particular control system. I'm talking about the OT specifically. Okay, these are the things which you can always bookmark in your browser and get up-to-date information. Okay, these are the prerequisite where first gather information about what under what's the system under consideration, and then you have to have the risk matrix at any cost. If not, then maybe you have to create your own risk matrix, and also the take the inputs from the process hazard analysis, which will be very crucial. But if because there are many because these are also part of risk assessment for the safety functionalities, and then gather threat and vulnerability information. Yeah, can we? Yeah.
So I would like to interrupt here.
Yes.
I was reading through some of the questions, though we will be covering that they are specific to risk assessment only. But most of the people, they are new to OT and they are asking that they don't understand the terms. So we will try to be more objective wherever we feel that this terms needs more explanation. Either through the discussion we'll answer it, or at the end of this discussion when there is a question and answer session, you may specifically ask those questions. I'll try to answer them. Thanks. You can continue.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, if there are any specific questions related to risk about the OT, so maybe we can answer those as and when required. But I'll try to generalize stuff, and then try to incorporate all these ICS elements, which IT people also can understand. Yeah, as I spoke about this, the risk assessment workflow as per 62443, there are two workflow, or one is high level risk assessment, another is detail level risk assessment. These are the terms you can see in 62443. So what we have displayed here is the high level risk assessment. And if you see, maybe, hopefully you all can see, yeah. Say, the workflow starts with start and then ZCR1. What is this? ZCR1, it's zone and conduit requirement. So as Shiv has explained previously, the zone and conduit diagram, right? The zone is nothing but it is a logical grouping of assets which shares the common security requirements. Even he has shared one of the architecture where you have particular zone. Let us consider, since all of you are from IT background and OT mixture, so let us consider the enterprise zone where you have all your ERP system and logistic system, and then which are all office based systems, which will be need to communicate to the OT as well via DMZ layer. That's a standard the architecture we can see in the OT domain. So now, for each of the zone, that is called enterprise zone, and the DMZ zone, and then the control system zone. Okay, for just for easy understanding, let us take only these three zones. So for each of these zone, so that's why the ZCR, it's a zone and conduit required. So what is conduit? It's the communication link between your each zone. For example, IT/OT convergence. Sometimes we talk about it, right? So this linkage between how it communicates, like maybe it could be through DMZ firewall, or maybe even your copper cables or fiber optic cables. That is also called conduit. Okay, so this workflow chart ZCR1, which talks about it's the zone and conduit requirement first. That's a one. This is the terminology used by the ISA 99 committee, which is creating the IEC 62443 standards. So on the left side, whatever you are seeing, it's the inputs. What is the input you require to perform each of these steps? On the right side, what is the outcome after you apply this? Okay, for example, ZCR1, identify the system under consideration. We talked about in the previous slide. So what are the inputs that you have to have from the end user or customer, or maybe within your organization? Have the system architecture, have this asset inventory. Maybe you can collect the company policies, regulation, or maybe the tolerable risk guidelines. So many such input documents you need. Once you have that, could be you might be able to find some gaps, for example, in the system architecture, where you are seeing the in the asset inventory you have two PLCs, but in the system architecture probably you are not finding the second one. So that is where the output of this particular step is the updated system architecture, where you will include the the second PLC as well, right? So likewise, you might feel some of the company policies where it does not talk about anything about OT, how to change the password particular to OT assets. So you will be updating that policy, right? So this is the requirement. So likewise, then you will do the perform an initial cybersecurity risk assessment. So for this, the input is existing PHAs. If there is no safety system is not involved, and then maybe you can avoid, or maybe other risk assessment if it is done on the for the plant, and then you can collect those information. And also you should have the corporate risk matrix, be it IT or OT. You should have that corporate risk matrix, because which dictates what is your impact and the consequences. I'll tell you how it differs, risk matrix. Recently, I have done a few of the railway projects as well. For railway industry, the impact and the consequence is totally different. And when it compares to the oil and gas, right? So depending on your sector as well as on the organization, this risk matrix is differs. So without this risk matrix, it's very difficult to quantify when we do the detailed risk assessment. For the high level, yes, definitely, but still, what is the consequence? How do you evaluate those? For example, for oil and gas, for the safety impact could be higher. But for railway also, the safety impact would be very high, and environment also, maybe financial, reputation. So likewise, and when you go to gas sector, or maybe even it depends on the geographical location as well. Some part of Europe could be very has the high threat exposure, could be compared to the Asian countries. So likewise, this risk matrix is a very important document that you need to do. And the initial evaluation of risk, where we when we do the cyber perform initial cyber security risk assessment, you just review the architecture, conduct the gap assessment, and then probably you can gather some information on the threats, vulnerability, on the available information. That is the initial risk assessment. Could be you can just rate it as high, low, medium. So that's on the high initial risk assessment. And then you try to partition the SUC into zones and conduits. This is where most of us try to get confused. So I'll tell you why this is very important thing. As per 62443 standard, if you follow this standard, right, initially you have the system under consideration. If you are working as a GRC consultant or any consultant, so your job is to dictate these terms. In the first step, as part of identifying the system under consideration, you already reviewed the system architecture. Now you know that it is not segregated as per the zones and conduit concept, which is defined in the 62443 standard. So what is that zones and conduits? It dictates you have to have your control system like BPCS, right? Basic Process Control System, which is non-safety, should not be in the same domain as the safety system. It should be different. And if you are using any wireless system, it should not be in the same zone, right? And if you are connecting temporary connections, like you bring the laptop, maintenance laptop, and connect into the BPCS system or safety system, which should be in different zone. So this is where the ZCR3 comes into picture. So you have to have that, you have to partition that SUC into zones and conduits. Where it is defined in the 62443 3-2 standard itself, or maybe you can follow 2-1 as well. And there are, these standards clearly give you more clarity on this, how to segregate zones and conduits. There are many, such examples. It depends on, if you feel that the asset is very critical, I want to, keep it in a separate zone, and then you are free to go. And in one zone, you can have sub zones as well, right? So you can have such kind of zones. And the more you segregate, the more secure, but the more expensive into your architecture. Okay. Now, once you have done that, you will identify that, okay, maybe your initial risk exceeds the tolerable risk or not. For example, when you perform the initial risk, tolerable risk is 5, for example, or maybe it is medium. Okay, I can accept the risk as low, but if it is not exceeding, right, the tolerable risk, then I will just document it and submit the report to the end user or the relevant stakeholder. But if the initial risk is not, it's greater than the tolerable risk, and then definitely I have to perform the detailed cyber risk assessment. So one of the most important thing what I liked about 62443 standard, since I am also doing the same work, so about the detailed risk assessment, okay, it clearly defines what exactly required, because it goes asset by asset. Okay, when you go asset by asset, it will have 100 vulnerabilities, and there will be 100 threat actors which can exploit. For example, wireless transmitter, you have control systems of different makes and models. So this detailed risk assessment, which will give you definitely, the more the risk, identification based out of this work. And here in this detailed risk assessment, you will be, assigning the target security level for each of the assets which have the common security requirements. It is that, if it is in the same zone, I'm taking, for example, I'm putting all my control system components into one zone, like PLCs and all these switches, which is connecting to the field devices, which has wireless transmitters, for example. And then maybe, I can rate the SLT based on multiple things that we will discuss in the coming slides. For example, it could be based on the geographical location or functionality or criticality of that particular devices. So it depends. Okay. So the SLT identification, there is no, the clear methodology to find SLT. It is up to us as a consultant or maybe expertise who we have to, talk to many stakeholders who are expertise in their area. So like we can talk to safety expertise, we can talk to the operational guy day in, day out. So this is what the expectation is. Okay. Once you have done the detailed risk assessment, then you can, the document the cyber security requirement specific assumption and constraint. That is also you can do. For example, when we conduct the risk assessment, sometimes we don't get enough information, or maybe some kind of constraints might be there that you cannot, customer may tell that, okay, you don't get this device report, or you can't run any, Wireshark tool or something. And then you can just mention in your report that what are the assumption and constraint that we have identified during our risk assessment. Actually, this workflow, if you are working in the consulting, domain, and definitely this workflow will help you clearly understanding. And then finally, as a, you detail everything as a part of cybersecurity requirement specification, CRS. Okay. The output of this, wherein, because you have identified the risk, you have given the recommendation saying that, okay, you have to have the proper whitelisting tool, or maybe security hardening for the switches has to be done, firewall has to be done. All these are captured already in the document, and it will go as a cybersecurity requirement specification for the next project, or maybe the as an ongoing project. And finally, until unless you get the approval from asset owner or the end user or customer, this is not going to be valid. Okay, as a consultant, it is your job or duty to get the approval from asset owner. And it is not necessary that all these risks what you have identified through this workshop may not be approved by the vendor, approved by the customer, right? So it is always remember, this is very important step as a risk assessment workshop, that you have to get the asset owner approval for this risk assessment. Okay. Yeah, so I have given the overall this thing, but Shiv, one second. I will be in this particular, just imagine like how to conduct the risk assessment. Always, many people ask me about this. So I will explain about a few things here, like how it will go. Okay, you are a consultant, okay, and one of the end user came. For example, I'll take Shell. So Shell wants to conduct the risk assessment for one of the plant in Dubai, okay, and then it has given to the consulting company. The consulting company will start gathering the information. First, they will understand the scope. Okay, where is the plant? And they start collecting all the input documents we discussed, right? So far, so everything. And then once you collect the documents, you go to site, you visit the plant, you collect all the information, and you note down. And if there are any gaps, you will tell or you will note down, because that will go as a part of the, and you will review the architecture, you will review the logs, you collect the network like PK file or a log file, syslog files, whatever. You collect all these documents and come back and do the risk assessment by on your own, maybe your internal team. And then probably you can send the initial risk assessment, what you have identified, to the customer. And then there is one more thing, that once you have done the initial risk assessment, and then customer may ask you to conduct a workshop for a week or 2 weeks time, whatever you have identified, whether those ratings what you have given, okay, whether it is a quantifiable or qualitative approach you have taken, but most of the time it is quantifiable based on the risk matrix what we have seen. And then you are the as a risk assessor, it is your duty to conduct. There will be one facilitator who conducts this risk assessment. Okay, all the stakeholders will be involved in this risk assessment workshop. So you, as a facilitator, you will run through each of the risk for each of the asset. Okay, and then everyone has to agree upon the risk rating. Why it is important? Because maybe from your point of view, you have done the safety rating as maybe it is moderate risk, but as a safety expert, he would rank this as high, okay, or critical. So that is where this risk assessment workshop, it's very important. Once everyone agrees to it, or if something, any other further recommendation is required, so once everything is done after 2 weeks, so it will go to the asset owner approval. And as a facilitator, you will notify all the meeting points and the workshop points, and then you will submit the report. And this risk assessment report will go as a cybersecurity requirement specification for the asset owner. Okay, it will go to the respective owner. Respective vendor also, if there are anything to be done, even for OEMs or security consultants or security service providers as well. So once you get the approval from asset owner, your project closes. So if you look at the workflow, the same thing what I have explained now. Okay, so please remember this on a high level, but it depends very, this based on my experience, and also I have discussed with Shiv. So this is possible that there may be a shorter, duration. It depends on the scope of the risk assessment as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now jumping.
Before you move, I like to, put some pointers here. There are some questions that I was trying to answer as we anticipated. Risk assessment is the one of the key topic that everybody would want more and more understanding. And this understanding will only come when you do the real risk assessment and see the systems very closely. That is the only way you'll get more understanding. So, but some of the questions were like, can you also do risk assessment during the design phase itself when you have not identified the vendor? So I have answered it in the chat, but yeah, again, I would like to highlight, yeah, exactly. That's the time that you can do the risk assessment and then identify what are the product you are going to purchase. Let's say your security level requirement is 3 and you have not done your risk assessment and you purchase security level 2 compliant product. Now the problem is you can't achieve your security level unless and until either you replace the product or put compensating countermeasure. So you do the risk assessment during the design phase itself with some high level understanding of what would be your potential requirements. And that is exactly the area where your experience will play a large role, and you'll understand, okay, this is the kind of industry here, this kind of risk would be there, and then I should be keeping this much as a baseline. But there are some parallel examples also. What you can do when you are confused like this, you can go to MITRA Tech Navigator, or Dragos has also put up a framework for this. Go to that particular industry, check what were the threats to the particular industry, and then you can correlate this information for threat intelligence. With this threat, you can actually calculate the risk. What would be the risk? So that is the way that you will design your system. But yeah, you need to do the risk assessment very early in the project development phase.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Definitely, as an OEM, if you are in the early security development, definitely you will set a target, and then if you get in the market, you will have the edge. So as part of this, to get the certification also, the risk assessment is one of the key aspect during this process. Okay, so you can do the risk assessment in the initial stage also, and also in the the existing system, you want to add some of the security countermeasures. Even you can conduct the risk assessment during that phase as well. If you look at the ISCS life cycle, the first step itself, assess. That is, you have to conduct the risk assessment as a first step, and then you design and implement, because based on the output from this assess phase, where you connect, take it as a cyber requirement specification, and you include in your design phase. And then after the once it is done and implemented, then you go to the maintain phase. There also you can conduct the risk assessment, where you want to add a few more components into it. What could be the risk? Definitely you will have that as part of your change management process. So yeah, in each of this life cycle of this ISCS, definitely the risk assessment plays a major role. Okay. Yeah, now we'll move on to the detailed risk assessment. That is where I'm going to show you the one of the sample architecture, and then we'll do the I'll show you the Excel file where we can how it is mapped. Yeah.
So you want to share a different file, or shall I?
No. I mean, first I'll show the the workflow on the next slide. Yeah.
All right.
This is the high level risk assessment. So the ZCR5 talks about the risk assessment on the high level, right? So
yes.
Yeah.
Is my screen still shared, or it's gone?
No. It's gone. I mean, it's in the Canva I'm seeing. Yeah. Sorry. Next slide. Yeah. So this is again the detailed risk assessment. ZCR5 talks about detailed risk assessment. Why I like this is it gives you the more and more threat scenarios, and you can go asset by asset, which is more key requirement for any OT environment. So that's why I always felt this could be. I know it's a tedious task, and also the you need more time to conduct such type of risk assessment. But still, what I have seen from my past experience and the current experience, customer also seeking to conduct the risk assessment as per this flow chart. Okay, what it talks about is you have to identify the threats, you have to identify the vulnerabilities, and then determine the consequence and the impacts, and determine the the unmitigated likelihood. This is a little bit confused, but still I'll try to map this with the Excel sheet, so then you will understand it better. Okay, and then you have to determine the unmitigated risk, that is without countermeasures. Okay, sometimes in an organization you have some kind of existing countermeasures, but still it is not in work. So then if you would have taken those actions, then what would be your mitigated threat likelihood and the risk? And also the SLT, why it is important, because when we are conducting the risk assessment, we are also targeting the security level, right? So security levels are like SL1, 2, 3, 4. The more higher the number, the more protection will be, the more secure your component will be. For example, when you compare SL1 certified components, will be, SL3 certified components will be much more valuable than, SL1 certified components or maybe systems. So yeah, definitely. And after that, we will check that, the unmitigated likelihood is greater than the risk. And this goes the same way, but I'll try to, so I'll explain these concepts with the Excel file where exactly it is mapped in our Excel sheet. So maybe I'll share. Before that, I'll try to complete the target security level first. Then it will become easier for us to understand that target security level. Okay. Yeah. Can we move to next slide, Shiv? Then we can come back to this slide and explain the concept. Yeah. Yeah. So exactly. So what is a target security level? Is a desired level of security for a particular system. For example, I have a control system where I have the PLC. My organization decided that my PLC will go with the SL1. That is a desired target security level. This is one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is maybe I supply the lot of components which form the system. For example, my company has PLCs. My company has switches also. My company has IDS. Means most of the control system components I will be supplying. And in that whole system, what my PLC is exposed to. So that risk assessment result will give you the target security level. The higher the number, right, the more valuable in the market. Or maybe a customer will say, think that your product is more secure than the other. So it's a competitive, right? So it's a desired level of, security. So what it clearly communicate to those responsible for designing and implementing, operating, maintaining cybersecurity. But if you are end user, for example, you can dictate the terms in the cybersecurity, during the bidding stage itself, that I need a SL1 certified components or system, or I need a SL2 compliant system. Now, if you look at the, I'll take the marine, the IMO has clearly now defines the rules, right? Like ER 27 and 26, which dictates most of the control system what you use in marine sector should be SL2 certified components. Okay. So in those scenario, most of the marine products in the current market, what I have observed is not certified for those target security level, but they are trying to integrate this 62443 standard into this. So that's why it clearly communicates such type of, during the design stage itself, you are dictating that, okay, I need security level 2. So the target security level should be assigned to a zone and conduit. It could be a component level and zone anyways, because it shares the common security requirements, right? So we have already discussed that performing a risk assessment will provide you the target security level. Yeah. So what are the methodologies that we use in the target security? Can we go to next slide? Shiv?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, SLT can be expressed as a single value, such as like SL1, 2, 3. Most of the time we have seen, or maybe vector, like it has to have the foundational requirements. I have, so we have discussed about FR1 to FR7, right? Foundational requirements. Maybe for some of the system, for for me, identity and access control could be a higher number than maybe for the time synchronization or availability. So in that case, the vector value will change. And there are different methodology used by the organizations. One is the based upon the difference between unmitigated risk and the tolerable risk. That is actually CRRF, based on the SL definition like SL1, 2, 3, 4, or maybe qualitatively establish the SL. If the risk matrix is like high, low, medium, such type of. But as per 62443 standard, there is no prescribed method for establishing SLT. Sometimes it becomes difficult to But more and more, the compliance itself pushing the asset owner to define your security level, then, these confusion will go. As an end user, you can always follow the respective domains, compliance and regulation. For example, as I told you, the IMO, International Maritime Organization, has clearly dictates that, okay, I need this. And even the railway sector, if you go, they will say that, okay, my target security system should be SL1 or SL2. So yeah. So now can we go to next step? This about target security level. So for our today's, conducting the risk assessment, I have taken this sample architecture from Cisco website. This is, this has, many different zones. For example, industrial network zone number 1 has the, the field devices and the PLCs, local switches, router, firewalls. The same set of devices and components are available in the industrial network zone 2 as well. And there is a conduit has shown to which is communicating to your industrial enterprise DMZ layer, where you have historian, you have patch management, you have inventory management, and again it is connecting to the enterprise infrastructure via conduit. Again, and again in turn it is connected to the internet. This is a sample architecture. But what we are going to do is the risk assessment for this particular architecture. How we can do this? First of all, we should have the asset inventory. This is our system under consideration. Okay. So the first step is, we try to understand that we have to identify the system under consideration. So this is the one. Then we will have the asset inventory. Okay. If the asset inventory is not available, we'll try to update it. Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay. Shiv, I'll share my screen.
Yeah, you can share.
Yeah. Please confirm if you are able to see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is a sample detailed risk assessment sheet what we have taken. This is also from our experience and also from some of our friends. See, this architecture, and we try to segregate zone wise. For example, industrial zone 1 has PLC, HMI, local switch, and field devices, router, firewall. This is some of the sample we have taken. We have Siemens PLC and the flow meter and digital wall positioner from Yokogawa. And we have an HMI, which is Dell make or some kind of version. And then we have, which is running with Windows XP, and also what are the kind of software. In the asset inventory, always remember that you should have to list down all the details, like including hardware, software, which is the version, which is the IP address, what are the protocols that you use, who is the asset owner, and the configuration. This is a sample version what we have taken. It could be necessary that your organization might have many numbers of columns which is added, which is required for your operation, day-to-day operations, and keep on updating this. Nowadays we have automated tools as well, to collect all the assets which are in the network. But sometimes we have seen in the OT environment where some of the components which are not connected to the the OT network, then at times it becomes difficult to have the visibility of these components. Hence, always have the combination of your automated tools as well as on the maybe some kind of Excel sheet. Or I know it's boring, but still I prefer. I have seen when during commissioning, this becomes handy when the automated tools are not collecting the data quickly. So these are the the asset name, asset type, asset ID. So these are the columns which you can keep it for asset inventory. Even for during your internal risk assessment, if you are from OEM, still you can keep it, right? Because you have to take asset by asset, and then also you can use the communication between your PLC and HMI via local switch. There could be possibility that. The good thing about detailed risk assessment is you have to identify the threat vulnerability on each of these components and each of the connection and each of the conduit. That is where your ZCR comes into picture. So then once you have that asset inventory, before that, as we discussed, we should have the risk matrix. Okay, this is a sample, risk assessment risk matrix, which you have taken from 62443 standard as well. So if you see on the left side, it's impact. There could be safety impact and environmental impact and financial impact and the reputation impact. So based on the rating, like if it is a trivial or just say number 1, and then it has limited, okay, I mean less effects. less impact or less consequences. Maybe the risk could be minor. And if it is a minor, then the damage would be more, little more, and moderate, major. So as on, it will increase. If it is a critical, then your financial damages will be more than $100 million. So this is a sample. That is why I said in the beginning, when you conduct the risk assessment, this risk matrix is very, very important. So I have seen almost 4 to 5 different risk matrices in the same domain. Okay, I have worked in the oil and gas sector. I have worked in the rail sector, and every time I see different risk matrix and try to understand the consequences and also the likelihood, how fast it could happen, how likely the event should occur if that particular threat could exploit, because each of the threat will be different for the individual sector. So now once you have that, so this I will touch upon later when we do the risk assessment. Now, yeah, hopefully you can see, or should I zoom in, or is it okay?
Yeah, I am able to see it, and maybe you can slightly increase the font size. Just one more thing, Manju, we have to take a check on time as well. We are already having 14 more minutes left for this session today.
That's it. I think I'm almost completing it. Give me 3 more minutes. I'll try to explain with this. So once you have the asset inventory and once you have the risk matrix, right, then I'll take the first zone as network zone, and then you have different components. I have taken, just for explanation, only the HMI station and the Windows software, which is XP, which is running, which has multiple vulnerabilities, and also my HMI station is running with WinCC and Windows software, and also there could be where okay, let us take a first step is in the detailed risk assessment workflow. What we have written is identify the threat, right? So in the identify the threat action could be, there could be insider threat, or it could be a adversary effect. They try to, insert a USB into the HMI station where with the sophisticated malicious software, right? What happens, how they will exploit this? Because in the vulnerability list down, we know that in the control room, which usually HMI stations will be in the control room, ports are not blocked, right, or disabled, and no antivirus also. This is the vulnerability that currently my system has. And if somebody, that threat action has this, and definitely there could be a DOS attack. This can spread to all other system, which could hamper your system. So what could be the problem? Like safety, environment, financial reputation. This is the the expansion of those. This is how this is coming. This is coming from your risk matrix. It could be, it is not necessary that we should have all the 4 columns. Okay, it can have only 2 components or 3 components depending on your risk rating. So now for this example, I'll try to explain only this particular row. Okay, so better, I mean, later you can just read out and you can. So now for the first one, I will say that for safety, it could be trivial. Trivial means 1. Environment also trivial. It doesn't matter. Maybe financially, it's minor. But for the reputation part, it could be moderate. But it is not necessary that you need to agree. That is where your risk assessment workshop comes into picture. So you all of us, all the stakeholders should agree for this particular rating, and then the maximum of this, I mean 1, 1, 2, 3. So when the maximum, the rating on the consequence is 3, then the unmitigated threat likelihood, you have to again, what is the possibility? This is where your experience, as you rightly pointed out, this is where your experience comes into picture. Depending on the scenario, you have to have, okay, I will say that it is likely to happen. Okay, so what is my likely to happen is this one. Okay, event experience once per year. So that is my experience. And then the risk is automatically calculated in our sheet. How it is calculated? We know that the risk is nothing but your likelihood into consequence, right? So what is the likelihood here? It is likely, that is number 5, right? So if you go back to matrix, it is 5. And into the what is the impact or consequence? Consequence is number 3. 5 into 3, 15. So if you go back to matrix, you look at here, the 50. 15 is in this color. So which is, the target security level is automatically assigned to 2. So this I will talk about in the end. But now just try to understand it's automatic. This is coming from this data store. If you look at 15, the target security level is 2. Only for this example, I am showing this. Okay. it is not necessary for your risk assessment. It is the target security level is to be added. It depends on the customer. Okay, if he is telling, then you can put. Otherwise, you just measure the risk. That's it. And then what are the countermeasure that these are the existing countermeasure. Okay, maybe you have the policies and procedure. Maybe you forgot to block it or disable it. And also antivirus is not updated or application whitelisting is not in place. So if you are already existing there, but you are not done, then you can just mention that. And then probably, yes, I can change this thing to unlikely. Then automatically your risk is reduced to how this has come. Again, the risk is nothing but your likelihood into consequence. So likelihood is unlikely, that is 3 into 3, 9. Okay. And then you have to come up with the recommendations. What is the recommendation? You have to disable the unused USB ports and relocate the HMI station to the server room where you will lock it. So no easily accessible. And also you can install the antivirus or strict enforcement policy. If you have done this, if the this recommendation has been taken care, then definitely it is not so possible that your risk has reduced less than tolerable risk. So for our risk assessment workshop, we have set the tolerable risk as 5. Okay. So we know that CRRF formula from our, maybe if you have not done, the CRRF is nothing but your unmitigated risk divided by tolerable risk. The unmitigated risk is before, the countermeasure. So that is this one. And 5. 1 divided by 5, the target security level is 0. I mean, 1 divided, CRRF is 0.2. And then 1 divided by 2, 0.4, it's 0. I mean, this is just for an example we have taken. And for example, 5 divided by 10, it's, 10 by 5, it's 2. So, but still we have taken, this is a sample, risk matrix or data store we have considered. It is not necessary that you have to follow the same. Okay. Try to, map it with this. So then you have achieved. So ultimate goal is what? Our ultimate goal is to bring down the risk less than the tolerable risk. For example, 3 is, less than 5. So it's green. So this is how you have to conduct the risk assessment. I know, in short time, it's difficult to explain everything, but we'll try to, comprehensively explain, because we are in a boot camp where only 4 hours left out and we have to focus on many other stuff. So now maybe, I'll stop here and maybe you can read out this. I think the recording session also will be available to all of you. Take it slow and read out this, and it is easy. It's not that difficult once you understand the flow. And now you map this exact flow with the, your detailed risk assessment workflow 62443. Then both will be correlated. Okay, the same terminology we have used here.